I'm Clint and welcome to Swatches Livestream number 45. We're going to be looking at the Red Riding Hood Art Challenge. In this episode, I need to double check. Nope, my webcam is not on. Hang on. For some reason, it closed that. Technical difficulties. We'll see if we can get that fixed here in just a second. Webcam. There we go. There we go. That's better. It's like I am not getting a green light on that camera. All right, well, sorry for that. I am illustrator and art educator Clint Cearley. Welcome to Swatches live stream here. Yeah, this is about the art challenge, like I mentioned, and it is for you viewers. Decide to follow some art challenges I give out to you guys, and you submit it in, and I give you some feedback from what I can suggest. You know, going forwards, ideas, problems, corrections, and also just taking your questions during the live stream. So if you're watching and recording, you might want to skip forwards a little bit for when we get started. Otherwise, we're going to be killing a couple of minutes with several announcements in order to allow people time to join in live. Shiznay, hey, I'm doing pretty well. How's it going out there? You guys let me know if you're having any problems on your side, but everything looks green here, so I'm going to assume it's all good. Yeah, so I decided we're going to do some announcements of a couple of things going on maybe everyone is not aware of before we jump into the challenge. Let me hop it over here. First up, if you're not aware, I am having new dates open for art consultation. If you want to have a video consultation with me one-on-one, we'll either use Skype or probably Google Hangouts. Skype has been a little iffy for me lately. Go over to artmentor.com and you get the full information out there. We can chat about your art career going forwards. If you don't know what to work on, we can chat about your portfolio, your gallery, what you should be working on if you have questions about the industry, or maybe you got your first gig and you just want to make sure that it's going well and you need some new ideas. Whatever it is that you would want to have my undivided attention on, go out there. You can get a half-hour or hour consultation and we can go over whatever you want to chat about. That is announcement number one. Number two is there is a sale going on. If you're not familiar with QBrush, qbrush.co. It's a site where you can go buy all kinds of great artist resources, tutorials, educational materials, as well as things like brushes and stock photos and all that sort of stuff. But I carry a lot of my products out there, and there is a sale on my Making Liliana video and file set. It is 35% off. Normally $14. It's down at $9 right now. Gives the entire workflow of start to finish that I do on my Magic Images. Gives you an idea of how I approach going through the sketches, how to decide which sketch to use, how to use poses. Yeah, I just give you the whole breakdown and kind of talk about, specifically on this video, about what to focus on at each stage of the process so that you're not trying to do, too much at one time. Also talking about how to choose the color scheme for that image and handling that in a simple way. So that is announcement number two. And the last announcement is next reward coming out on Patreon will be materials. How to paint materials. I've received quite a few comments, questions, and interest in me covering the topic. So I am taking a quick break from the Understanding Mood book and working on materials. These are just a couple of the little examples that I've already created to show you, just like, working from a very matte object, very glossy object, shiny, talking about the different aspects of a material so that you can go away understanding how to paint a lot of the standard materials like shiny metal and old metal and translucent things and transparent things and skin and leather, all kinds of your major stuff, so that you can go forwards and apply that to whatever you want to paint. Now, if you want to get that, you need to become a patron by the end of the month. I expect that this will be released right at the beginning of February. So you need to become a patron out on patreon.com/swatches at the $10 level to get this main content. I will also be coming out with a set of exercise pages to put into practice things in the chapter. And you will need to be at the $20 level on that to get all the exercise pages, which would also give you access to the video library, which a whole bunch of videos that you will not find on YouTube. Okay, well, that's it for the announcements. I'll just double check everything here. We got 9 people signed in currently. So I'm going to pull that out of the way. This live stream will likely go a little bit shorter than usual just because we have a fewer number of entries this time. But there we go. There we'll be changed it up. And also be pausing a couple of times in order to answer some questions that were submitted from the Facebook group. If you're not joined out there, go to swatches.group and it will hot link you over to the Facebook group. Just ask to join. I pretty much approve everybody to join there. We've got over 1,500 people out there. Also a great place to get some feedback on your work. So that takes care of it, I think. Let's dive into it. We want to just go alphabetically here, starting with Chelsea. And, go ahead. I'll mention it now that we get in here. The goal was to create a cover for Red Riding Hood. As if it was a book cover, I provided a template size and PDF PSD file that had a layer of the text. You are allowed to change the color of the text, but you have to leave the text where it is as it is, only changing the color if necessary. And the image should be kind of fairy tale, not hyper realistic. It can be more illustrative or graphical and convey most of the elements from the book. We should see Red Riding Hood, we see the wolf, the woods, and probably the cabin as well. So this is what Chelsea Bauer came up with for their entry. And I've already opened up these and pulled together some reference files and dropped them in here. Quick pause to say, if you want to ask me a question during the live stream, feel free to do that. Just put it down there in the chat. I will take a look at the chat probably at the end of each image review. Put @swatches in the type so that it will flag it for me to know that it is a question you'd like me to address. Okay, without further ado, Chelsea, this, okay, it's given me that. I need a new, there we go. So, I was like, I can't remember what I put on this one. Okay, Chelsea, for this one, it seems like you're going with a more straightforward scene. You're not going the graphical way that I sort of requested. So if you do want to make it more, realistic, it's just that there isn't any way that this isn't taken as a realistic scene. So I'm looking at this and it just looks like a giant wolf and a little girl, and that's it. Maybe you're trying to be graphical about it, but it's not coming off as a graphical way. It just looks like a giant wolf. And that's not really what we're going for. So I was wondering if we can find a new way to kind of balance the same elements, or at least if you want to go this way, make it more, I wouldn't say more abstract, but more graphical, a little more abstract, so that we don't take it as being a literal scene, but that these are just kind of standalone visual pieces that we see in, in an image. And it's just looking at the wolf. Obviously, this is just a pretty rough copy, and it's not real finished. But when I saw it, it just immediately reminded me of this lady's sculptures. Yeah, thank you. It's Beth Caverman, I think is her name. Caverner. I think it's Beth Caverner is the lady's name who does these. But I think that you could get some shapes similar to this in your wolf and in the fur. These really beautiful sort of lyrical shapes could work really well in the fur that you have here. And I would suggest taking a look at her work and seeing how she creates these forms out of these sculptures. And these are pretty big sculptures. I mean, like the size of an actual dog sculptures. They're fairly large. Been a fan of her work for years. But yeah, you might want to take a look at that just to help find some really cool shapes and flow to the image lines and stuff. Beyond that, another thought was to be a little more abstract about it, or do a two image thing where, all right, well, you want to have this shape, you want to have the wolf, you want to have her, but what if you kind of created a double thing where it's like this is a heel, right? And these are trees. So the wolf basically is shaped by the trees going up, on this hill. And then maybe the cottage, is here on the hill. And instead of the normal windows, it's the wolf eyes, right? And that's where the windows are. Then there's trees forming the shapes of the ears. And maybe there's a rock or something forming the nose. And maybe there's the pathway that kind of follows that. So all of a sudden you get the woods and the cottage become the shape of the wolf. And you could have, pathways or rocks or grass or shadow or whatever in order to kind of help tell the fur coming down. And, I'm just trying to think of something that's a little less literal of the way to handle the scene. Also, this is, it's okay for the placement, but it's not a real good set of shapes. I guess that's what I'm trying to think. Either go super simple with it, where it's, the big cloak is kind of hanging here, or the dainty little feet. And then she has, the basket. Or you need to do it real more literal, and in which case, make them more of the right size. So even if she was just that tall compared to it would be a little, more understanding. So, just throwing some ideas out there. Hopefully that helps. Anything else with that? No, we're going to be talking about some other ideas as well, but that's what came to mind. So there you go. That's my thoughts there. Well, I don't see any more comments in the chat. I assume everything's going good. For some reason, again, I forgot to set this down, I bet. Let me set this way down so that's not interfering. Here we go. Next up, Christoph. All right, Christoph, let me pull that up a little bit. Doing this sort of thing. Okay. Now, this is where it was to start with. I saw that you had posted on the Facebook page group and got some comments about her looking a little old. And that was one of my thoughts as well, is she looked a bit old for what I generally think of for Red Riding Hood. And that would be one of the early things that I would suggest to work on. I did a little change there in order just to indicate some of the changes. I'll flip that on and off. The main thing here is adjusting the distance and the relation of the sides between the features. Like if you have a child head is going to be more round. Adult is going to be more elongated. It's had a chance to fill out and elongate. A child's eyes are going to be lower relatively on the face, where an adult is going to be halfway. And then, the nose is going to be really small in the mouth, where the nose is going to be halfway here and then the mouth. So what we have is a bit more of an adult distance because the eyes are about halfway on the head. She has her head tilted a little bit, so we see a bit more up there. So that's what I do, is like trying to move the chin up a little bit, get the eyes a little bigger. The eyes themselves don't grow very much from the day that you're born. Like the eyes grow very little compared to the size of the rest of the head. So they look larger on a child than they do on an adult. So that would be something else you can consider, making the eyes a bit larger compared to the size of the face. Also looking at the expression, I'm not sure exactly the expression that you're going for, but take a look at trying to find some expression sheets. Pinterest, Google image search, something like that. You can find suggestions. People have drawn expressions. I had an interesting one here. Emotions of facial expression by Cedar Seed. I picked this up years ago, but they have notes on each one of them of what's iconic about that particular emotion, and it moves from positive emotions to like negative emotions, intense emotions, and very muted emotions, and you can follow the chain down, seeing the slight changes overall. So go take a look at that sort of thing, and it's also not a bad option just to go get some photo reference. Like take some, just maybe you have a daughter or a niece or a friend that has a little girl, and just tell it, look scared or look frightened or whatever, and take some photos. Look to see how the face responds to that. Okay, so that aside, let me also just move this over in case. Okay, all of a sudden I'm getting a bunch of comments loading. I was not getting any updates to my chat for since the very beginning. Let me look at these comments real fast. Anime says, really like your idea of the wolf being formed out of the forest in cabin shapes. Cool. Yeah, I think it's a good option. Jonathan says, hello, everybody. Hello, Jonathan. As I mentioned recently, I've got myself involved in Art War 3, so I'm not participating here, but I'd love to see how others approach this challenge. Yeah, man, glad to see you're continuing with that, Jonathan. Good for you, man. Always good to join in the Art War. Pushes you pretty good. Soldness? I don't know how you pronounce that without an extra vowel in it. Sevno. Yes, everything is good with me with the stream. Good. Yeah, I don't know why I get conflicting information from YouTube and OBS. Pocky says, Swatches, hi, first time in your stream. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining. There's a lot of stuff I'm sure you could be doing at this time. I appreciate you joining here. I have to say, you remind me a mix between David burn and a farmer. I will have to look that up. I don't know who that is. And I mean that in the best possible way. Well, I will try to take it in the best possible way then. Okay, now, breaking from just the facial thing, talking about kind of the design of the image, I'm a little conflicted right now. I like the very monotone sort of approach with the red accent. And in fact, you might just want to go with black and white with red. And you could even just make the text white, right? That can be really cool, is one thought. Let me do that. Let me set that to a color layer. I haven't tested this. Something that I would look into if it was mine. Like if we ran... That was black and white. Yeah, I mean, if you just had the red accent, then the eyes could also be red for the wolf. But design-wise, it's kind of conflicting. Again, it feels very literal, where there isn't... I guess I'm trying to think of a more graphical way to approach it, instead of literally this guy is right behind her. This is pretty good. This is very iconic of Red Riding Hood. There we go. Yeah. So I'm almost feeling like we need to have one of these dominant and then one of them subordinate to the other one. Like, let's grab all that and then put that there. If it was like this, all of a sudden Red Riding Hood is kind of secondary to the wolf, and maybe she is in shadow and the wolf is there more, or maybe she's well lit but the wolf is darker but his eyes show up. Otherwise, doing where she is dominant and he's there. If not, then I would say let's try to do a very clear split. So you got this sort of thing going on, and instead of this angle being over here, you run that angle right down the split so that it's a very clear, this side versus this side story. And you use what you're trying to do is find the edges to match. And this is something that I would love to see you guys do. It's something that we have not done pretty much at all in any of the challenges, which is to start treating the image as a graphical set of pieces and not just a realistic scene. Let me pull up some pictures that I had downloaded. And it's kind of like this, right? Just showing a graphical way to approach something. That this is created in the negative space of the paper. The paper is the positive space. It is the actual thing, but we see the animal in the negative space. So it's using, the opposite of something to create a shape. This was a really good one. And you got this character down here, a little silhouette. We have the shape of a dragon, but the dragon shape is also the shape of the tower, and then all of the shapes of the trees and the mountains in the silhouette, in that space, become the texture of the dragon itself. This is exactly the sort of thing I'm talking about, that I think you would do better to try to grab a bit of that approach. So if you could find a way to run this shape, whatever shape that you can come up with for the the hood, and reference a hood, okay? Because hoods are generally a bit more triangular on the top. And why I mention that is because you've got the wolf, and if you can run those two edges together, all of a sudden this edge for a cloak has some wrinkles in it, and then it comes down here, and then it has a piece that billows off the back. Now, literally those two shapes become the same edge, and that's how they meet up. And then you run that edge right down from corner to corner, so you have this split image, right? And then that pretty much has the same elements that you're already looking at, but it becomes this really cool kind of dynamic where it's a seamless piece that comes together, and they each exist as a part of the other one. There you go. All right, so that was the feedback on that one. Look forward to it. Yeah, and play around with the black and white with the red highlight thing. The red color tone as just one discordant color, and use that where you need. Like the red eyes on the wolf, the red lips on her, the red hood on this, the red little, hat there. I think that could really work. And this fading that to just black down here and then letting this show up as either white or red in the text. You could have a very nice sort of classical upscale image out of that. All right, I'll save. Now, I did have some questions from the Facebook group, but I left those over here somewhere. Let me pull those up. There we go. No, that's not what I'm trying to grab. Oh, I've got too many things layered over too many things. Where is it? Where did you put that? Is it even there? No, I guess not. There we go. Pull that back up. When you're trying to run everything on one monitor. Oh, it is really not wanting to open that file. There, finally. It was just giving me the preview. It wasn't actually opening the file, so I could never get back to it. Sorry about that. I know that's crazy on your screen. Okay, there we go. Now we get it up. I can leave that over here now. Be able to get back to it when I need it. Christoph, Clint, what is the meaning of life? I know that you mean that cheeky, but you asked me, so I'll tell you. A fellow was asked about 2,000 years ago, pretty much the same sort of question. And he gave the right answer. It was to love God with everything that you have. All your heart, all your strength, all your might. And the following is very similar. To love your neighbor as yourself. We call that the golden rule. That's how you're supposed to live life. That is the best way to love life, to enjoy life. That's the way that we're supposed to do it. That's the way we work best. And I'll tell you what, I live trying to follow that. I've not regretted it for 1 minute. I love God. I love Jesus. I love what he's done for me. And I love him because of who he is. And I know a lot of people look at him, maybe they look at the Bible, and they say, it's a bunch of things that you can't do. Don't do this, don't do that. And I'll tell you what, it's not about that. It's about loving something that is lovely. And he is lovely, and God is lovely, and he is real. And it is not a sacrifice to love that which is lovely. I admire his character. I admire his beauty. I admire his imagination and his creation. And I admire it in a similar way that I admire a beautiful mountain when I look at it. I admire a beautiful sunset. It's a beautiful thing. It's not a sacrifice to love it. It's not a sacrifice to enjoy it and have it a part of your life. No, you asked me, so I answered it. There you go. That's your straight answer. I hope you take it to heart. Because all this rest of the stuff we do doesn't mean squat if you don't have that. So, you asked, I answered. All right. What time do we need to submit? Okay, that was just other stuff. Ricardo asks, hey Clint, could you explain what neutrals are and how to use them effectively in our work? It always amazes me to see how colorful your paintings look, despite the fact that most of the colors in them are very desaturated. Oh, okay, I need to turn that heater off. That was getting a bit warm. What neutrals are? Well, neutrals are generally considered colors that are very near gray. I don't think I have that file on this machine. I cover that in my colors chapter of Understanding Mood. If you haven't picked that one up, I talk about that as being one of the ways to key colors together. You can either key colors together by having a tint across all of the colors. So like if there was a blue light on the entire scene, then it's going to make all the blues sort of, all the colors blue shifted. And that can key things together. But also, you can key colors together by getting them all near the same amount of saturation, which is kind of where you get your neutral tones. Other people consider neutrals around the nearer the browns and the taupes, that sort of thing. So there's a little difference on there. But how to use them effectively in your work, I think that is how you make other colors seem brighter than they really are. I've kind of used the example before, but let's let's turn this off for a second and get back to these guys. I could just use this actually. Okay, so let's make another version of this. You can either make a color more saturated so it tries to stand out, or you can mute all the other colors around it. And that's what I try to do with a lot of my images is if you can control the colors so that they're not as strong as they could be, then you allow the other colors to seem brighter. So in this case, like, we didn't make that brighter, but it looks brighter because everything around it is duller. And that is a way that you can keep yourself from running out of color, because there's a certain amount of maximum value you can get, and that's a good way. It's also something you need to keep in mind if you're dealing with anything with a lot of distance, because not only do colors have a tendency to get lighter, as they would say, because of the atmosphere. But one of the biggest things is they also lose saturation. And they don't lose saturation evenly. You'll find that yellow is one of the first colors that you will lose in distance. So if you're trying to convey distance, then shifting over to more neutral tones is a good way to do that and kind of indicate that something is further away. Anyway, that's my just offhand answer to that. Hopefully you find it helpful. Yeah. Next up, we have Galena. Galena, I don't know that I recognize your name. Are you new to the challenges? Oh no, if you're in here, let me know. If not, who knows? Okay, I took a look at this, and there is not a lot going on here. So maybe you have a limited amount of time, and I'm just trying to give as much answer as I can on a very limited amount of visual information. So when I saw this, it immediately made me think of this sort of thing, a paper cutout design. And that could work really well for this. And it's something that is quite doable in Photoshop. You create your mask and you get your photo texture, right, of whatever your paper is. You literally put that into your mask. You can add a drop shadow to it. You would have to play around with the drop shadow. You might even have to hand paint it, because in order to get the proper version where the paper is not perfect, right? Some areas it sticks up a bit more like that, so the drop shadow is further down. Then on other places, it's flight against the other layer, so you don't really have any drop shadow. And then there's each thickness to each one of these, so you get a bit of that. That would be a really cool approach. I just copied off a couple of different approaches, different ways of kind of building it up and creating a scene. These would all be very doable. And like that guy. This sort of thing, all one color, but used more depth to it to create kind of a three-dimensional feel to the whole thing. All of these would be completely, perfectly acceptable in this format. So that's what I was thinking. Like, you could have the wolf head here, and you have a different layer for each one of these. You have the trees, you've got her. Then kind of like what you have on this one. Oops, wrong layer. On this one, which is you have some standout color or character, probably Red Riding Hood here, right? And that's going to be in your bright red, and probably use the same color down here to key into your font as well. I do think you should play around with the shapes though, and the arrangement of this. I don't think it's not that engaging of a particular design. I think you could just push it a bit further. Like, even if you just made this more blatant about that with the background, and then you have these overlapping each other, and you can do your same series of heels going back, doing that sort of thing. You can still put that up there. Probably put these two right on top of each other, visually speaking. And then you have Red Riding Hood down here. Oh, no, Mr. Wolf. With her little hood. Now it looks like that guy from Journey. All right, that character from Journey. Anyway, and then you have the little house up there. And then maybe you have a little thing for the smoke on the little house. Yay. And try to find really good silhouettes. Because that's what's going to sell it on this particular approach if you're deciding to do this way. Then you could have, like you see here, cutouts for the eyes, or cutouts to give extra thickness to something. This might be completely off base of what you're thinking, but I'm just trying to throw out kind of a different approach, a different idea for each one of them of what it made me think of. So that is my thought on this one. Glenn, I look forward to seeing what you want to take it. You don't have to use that approach. If you want to just paint this scene up in completely different style, you go for it. There you go. All right. Close that. Got some more comments down here. Solness says, hey Clint, how many sketches can I send next time? It was really hard to choose one, so you probably could help me choose the best idea next time. It's Galena. Sorry. Oh, okay. So you're Galena. All right. Appreciate it. Thank you for letting me know. You can submit about as many as you want. I would prefer that if you're going to send in multiples, just compile them into one image and just put, if you want to do 3 images, then just put them all 3 there so that I don't have to download and open 3 individual pieces. But whatever you feel is good. If you are having difficulties choosing, or if you want to put a little question about, I thought about this one, but I kind of liked this about this one, feel free to put a little comment in there. And it, actually gives me a better idea of where your head is at and what would help you the most in order to get answered. So, Lisa is up, and Photoshop doesn't want to open. There we go. I need to scroll back down. Okay, Lisa, very different style here. And you said, idea from here, try to make sketch better. Oh, I've got a different layer there. Then graphite or charcoal drawing on smooth paper. Try to make sketch better, full color oil painting on smooth panel. Okay, between these, I'm definitely going with this one. Lisa, this is a killer idea. I would say solid, but it's more than solid. This is a killer idea. The doubling of the wolf head as being the woods formed by the trees and the rocks and stuff. That is not an easy thing to pull off, but you're pulling it off really well. So I would hate to see you go with just a standard approach when, well, I know that you're kind of doing a similar thing here, but this one just works a lot better. And it's more engaging. So my preference would be go with idea one. I think you can clean the concept up a little better, but I've got to say this is just really solid to begin with. Her silhouette is not reading real well. That's definitely one place that I would suggest putting more effort. Let's find a better way to have her silhouette. And it's also just so small. And we should be able to have a little better distinction of what we're looking at when it's small and be able to read that. I think maybe you can find some better, cleaner, or more interesting shapes with all of this. I didn't pull any references up for this, but it really looks like a linotype sort of image. Now you can definitely go with, I think you're saying graphite charcoal. If you have a clear idea how to sell that with the graphite and charcoal, then go with it. I do not want to hold you back from, going after that vision that you have. But you may also want to take a look at doing a linotype. That is where they would get a printing process and they would etch out what they want to be not shadowed, light. So they do it backwards. Everything that's supposed to be light, you etch it out. Then you would literally, dip that in ink and you press it on something. And the classic old books, that's how they would do all the illustrations, right? Because it was a printing press. Like literally they get it and they, put the ink on it and then they put the paper on top and they roll across it. And I think that is also a good option because it's such a classic thing for such a classic story. But graphite would do very well also if you can do the same thing. Continue to play with the shapes, seeing what you can kind of pull out of it, see if there's a better set of trees or something. You also might think about switching up the contrast. So like you have trees on white against black up here, but then maybe you have black trees against a white background down here. And so you can flip-flop it in order to get a different set of shapes or dynamic to it. I'm not saying that is an answer, but consider that as a possibility. Continue to push that one would be my suggestion. I love the whole idea to it. Matthias says, "Hi, life got in the way for me this week. I'm still okay to upload for the final, right?" Absolutely, Matthias. And that's the same for everybody. If you're just joining in this or you know about it but you haven't got into the challenge yet, you don't have to have submitted for this in order to submit a final. You are completely free to still submit a final for next week. Of course, you do need to be a patron at the $10 level or more over on Patreon in order to be able to have access to that. But if you are, feel free. Absolutely. Send it in. Matthias says, I like the paper cutout idea. Well, thank you. Got a couple of people liking that. So, I believe we had another question over here. Hi, Clint, as Zero says. Bronze Vulpes over here. Vulpus? I don't know. I wonder what's your opinion on painting over 3D models, and what's the color range we should use in screen to get colors printed as similar as digital version? What's my opinion on painting over 3D base models? I think that they are very handy when used correctly, and I think that they could be very harmful if used incorrectly. They are a tool, but it is a kind of dual-edged tool. And the idea here is it's easy to use them as a crutch. I'm just going to just paint something on top of this. And that's okay if the base model is really, really close to what you need and you don't follow it too literally, because the brain has a tendency to stop being very creative if it has a chance to simply copy something. And I would suggest making sure that you establish your sketch first, know what your image direction is before you start painting over the model. Then use the model to help sell the accuracy, not direct the image. Those are two different things. They can be uber helpful in figuring out difficult perspective, especially if the perspective is like a fish eye sort of thing, or like a 3-point perspective, where you have multiple figures kind of, next to each other in an environment. Those can be hard to figure out. The other thing to be aware of is a program like Poser is very popular, where you can have your basically a digital action figure. You kind of manipulate it into different poses and use it as a reference. Realize that is pretty good to tell you proportions and general perspective, but it's not helpful in conveying human motion or I want to say kinesiology, I think it is, the movement of the body. Kinesiology, I believe. So those models don't feel weight. They don't reflect gravity. And the human body has to move and pose so that it can stay balanced, and those models don't. So try to take some reference photos that you can, do some gesture drawings to figure out what the flow of the body would be, then combine that information with the perspective and proportional accuracy of your base model. If you're using it for cities maybe, or buildings, or that sort of thing, if you're having any questions about it limiting you too much, then try to scale back the detail on the 3D models. Just keep them closer to a basic shape rather than incorporating all the details into them. So there you go, a couple of ideas on that. Next up, Martin joined recently. Yeah, I remember you joining. Okay, no, somebody else was just talking about how many can I submit. Martin sent in 4 images here, so this is perfectly acceptable. We can just kind of chat through these. You say, I'm not happy with any of these, but if you have to choose one, will be this. I couldn't translate what I had in my head, and I feel that doesn't express what the description said. Anyway, these are what I could do. I do appreciate the brainstorming here. That's pretty cool. And it's definitely something that is a good practice. So thumbs up on that. You're doing it the right way, working through ideas. Yeah, I'm going to X this one. It's a bit more comic book. It's like comic book panels. It's the right thing for the right avenue, but this just isn't that avenue. I'm not getting a clear enough feeling of the scene and what this particular story is from this. It's just too close or not laid out correctly. Both of these have usefulness. I make this a little bit bigger so everybody can see it. That could completely work, especially if you keep it more illustrative and kind of flat tone. And we talked about James Jean. Let me write that out. I didn't save any of the files over, but James Jean did a series of covers for years on the Fables comic book, and that could be sort of similar to what he did, and that would be something worth looking at if you wanted to go with that approach. I think that what you did actually in this simple sketch is a good option, which is doing like a two-tone thing, so that she is done in two tones. Then maybe the wolf is done in two tones. Each section of this is done in two tones. So it's kind of a printing sort of thing, it's like screen printing, again, kind of a linotype sort of thing. And that could work really well if you wanted to continue with that approach. But if you want to go with this one, it's going to be similar to what we looked at on one of the earlier ones, which is trying to find a double use of an edge or a shadow or that sort of thing. A classic way to do it is like what we saw here, which is creating a shape and then letting another part of the story fill that shape through the silhouette. Same sort of thing here, right? So that is my thought in this case is, okay, maybe you have her here, and I'm gonna just put a border on that so we have a clear idea what that is. Okay, so you've got this sort of thing going on. That's fine. Then can we find a way to make the shadow into these shapes so they all start running together? So the shadow, wherever the light is coming down on the hood, and the hood probably is going to be doing, covering part of the face there. And you've got the folds coming off of this, right? So the fold shadow becomes the side of the house. You make these the same so that basically this bleeds into the house. Then maybe the house edge bleeds into the corner of, the wolf's face. Or the trees come up and the branches come up and they form part of the wolf's face. And that way the shadows and the lights of each one of these start becoming the shape of the other thing next to it. It's a little bit of an M.C. Escher sort of approach where you've seen it. It's like the fish become airplanes and the negative space around the fish become the airplane. So I'm thinking like of the wolf's head, you've got, they have fat ears, that's right. And then, they have that sort of thing going on. If somehow the shadow from the shadow pattern of the hood could make that shape, then, the shadow pattern of the hood could also make the shape of the side of this. And try working those together, and that could work well. This expression, also consider how you're going to be going about this. This is also a good place to try to use some interesting shadow. So if you're going to have nice bright light up here with your red, then you could have like a shadow going, I'm trying to grab this. I have the shadow being casted from the hood across the face, and maybe only a bit of the red in the eyes you get a catch, or maybe you have a white edge on the eye, or maybe you can't see the eyes at all, but just the mouth or something, so that this kind of continues the same sort of thing, that at least it has a dynamic set of shadows going across the face, and not just that this is really realistic and then these are very graphical. So just try to make sure that you kind of keep that even with some sort of interesting light going across them. And probably working with a limited color scheme. I like this shape of this house back here. That's a really cool shape. It's kind of asymmetrical with the windows, and it's really tall and skinny, and I would like to see that approach. You could also consider, and this is a pretty classical sort of thing to do, which is just the straight up profile, right? Just using a really good profile for the character. So this is in profile. Actually, that's probably the best suggestion of everything I've said so far. So like she's in profile, but this is all straightforwards, right? And so we don't see her as much, but she's the largest thing. And yeah, if it was mine, I think I would go that way instead of the 3/4 view. Just have her be the largest thing in the image. And it can be the sort of thing where, her profile is basically the whole distance. And then the shadows, all the shadows form the story that she's going to go through back here, right? So yeah, that would be how I'd approach that. Okay, did we get any more that I missed? No, looks like it. And this one? Ezekiel Mercado says, I read in Twitch that you own a Intuos Bamboo. Is that the tablet in which you always work? Why not upgrade? That's the tablet that I used when I wrote that. The pen ended up breaking. The little spring gave out on me in the pen, and I had a XP tablet, so I just started using it. And why don't I upgrade is I don't see a lot of the point. If I did anything, I would upgrade to a Cintiq, I imagine. But as far as just the higher grade tablets, I don't notice any difference. Like if I have 1,000 levels of pressure sensitivity or 5,000 levels of pressure sensitivity, I don't see the difference. It becomes so finely tuned that my paintings aren't that refined. Like the difference between half, I'm just thinking about it on a value scale, right? We usually talk values 1 to 10. We don't talk about values from 1 to 5,000 and go, oh, well, that's 1/5,000th of a value too dark. No, that's way too refined for my taste. Also, I have never used any of the express keys on pads. I always use keyboard shortcuts, so I don't see the point of paying extra for pads that have buttons on them that you can hotkey to stuff. So yeah, there you go. Maybe I'm totally missing out on it, but I don't see the point in upgrading for my particular workflow, unless maybe I went up to a Cintiq, because I do think working on a screen could be helpful. So maybe that's something that I'll get in the future. And Mikawai. Open this up. Mikawai got 2 concepts here. He had also sent a little message just saying, not really happy with them. I want to think he had said he's not real happy with them, but thought he would send them in. He did like 9 different concepts, and these were the 2 that he disliked the least. That's what it was, and wanted to hear some feedback on it. I can definitely hook you up with some feedback. Let's grab a color here that we can see, maybe a red. Okay. So This one I find just really straightforward. There's nothing really engaging or kind of original about it. It's just a very straightforward image. Although it's rendered pretty well, it's not haunting. It doesn't really kind of draw me into the story. So I'm going to say that one's not as good as this one. Now, this one, actually, you've hit on something I find quite interesting. And I think that you can push this even further and get a lot more out of it. This whole wolf head in the foreground, hidden thing, good stuff. That's good. And you could even push that further. I'm thinking you create, I'm going to shift. You can push that further by really playing him up. Right. We'll need to move her up a little bit, I guess. Might even be able to make her... Nope, I need her on top. There we go. So yeah, you can have him running up here too. If you're wanting to get more loose with your style and how you approach this and do kind of a blending thing, then you could almost have, the ears becoming parts of the trees. And so he is kind of the force. You would need some sort of backlight over here in order to get, the outside of the ear and make sure that shape sells. But he could become almost the embodiment of the forest. And I would suggest in this case that at least these need to be going straight up. But yeah, the spooky limbs, oh, the finger limbs. That would be something that would be sort of appropriate here as well, to give a bit more of a ominous feeling. With the house, I'm sure that you just blocked this in as a very simple house, but let's see about coming up with something a bit more interesting, a better shape. The other one had like a big kind of A-frame house with a couple of windows on it. Like that. Just that approach is just something a bit different. So doing that, and also think about kind of a dark and light sort of interplay here, where we want to make the top part also a little ominous. This is excellent in its ominous way. And, if the house, give me a regular round one. If the house was done more in oh, that's not black, that's why. If the house was more of a silhouette, right? And maybe you have, this is mainly dark back up here. So it's kind of light where she is, but where she's going, it's darker. And you just have some of the light coming in between the tree limbs or whatever. So it's a bit scarier up there, right? That's a possibility. Or if you don't want it scarier back there, then I still think just having the house kind of darker and letting some windows shine would make it show up a bit better than it just being in the same value range as everything else. This sort of works well as having a lot of negative space here because it allows her to show up and it makes her feel like she is alone. Right? She doesn't have any cover and she's got to go from here all the way up there without, anything to protect her. So that's just, kind of a flat tone of color or whatever. Also, I'm not sure what style you're going with. This feels almost watercolor-ish here, which if you do, I would personally find kind of cool. Whether it's a real watercolor or fake watercolor, I think would work quite well on this image. There are some really excellent ways to create watercolor effects with your paintbrushes, and also using a couple of realistic watercolor photographic elements and kind of put them in there to blend the two together. But Just talking ideas there. But yeah, you're on a solid idea with this one. I would say just continue with that. See about, again, trying to find really good shapes with her. I think the pose is nice. She's kind of like alerted, but she's not necessarily scared yet. Let's see about either having the hood all the way back off of her head, or make the hood definitely, let me grab something darker. Have the hood either definitely over her head, or have it all the way, hanging back. She's got it pulled back. But right now it's just sort of setting right on top of her head at like the midpoint, which doesn't really work. It would fall down or something. And then maybe just a little extra tip, on the bottom of that. It's falling right around with the edge of the skirt. We might want to get some sort of triangular shape out of it a little bit, because that shape reads really well and very simply as classic kind of Red Riding Hood shape. So, Mikowai, no, I have high hopes for what you'll do with this one. If you gave the wolf a mohawk, it could work as a path to the house. Yeah, I suppose you could give the wolf a mohawk. So Mikowai, there you go. There's another option. A mohawk on the wolf. How many more did we have on this one? What do you think of Photoshop raising its monthly subscription? Do you think that it is the only industry standard program out there, or is it losing face? Honestly, Cassie, I was unaware that Photoshop had raised their prices. I'm sure if I had looked at my billing statement, I would know that. But I didn't realize that. But now that I know that, what do I think about it? I think inflation happens and prices go up. Yeah. So if they haven't raised them since they switched over to subscription, it seems about time, because even Netflix did that recently. A lot of those subscription-based programs are. Is it still worth it? To me, it is. Certainly, since it's my livelihood and I use it on practically a daily basis, yeah, I would say it's still worth it. Is it the only industry standard program out there? No. There's others out there. I know people use like Art Rage. I know people that work on tablets and stuff that use other programs. Painter is also an excellent option. It is, I'll just say that, it is the industry standard. It is still the one used by the most people in the most places, but it's certainly not the only option. And if you're hearing a little background noise, it has started to rain. So that's not you, that's here. Is it losing face? Not to my knowledge. I haven't picked up on anything about Photoshop losing face. There might just be more options out there and people are, using them now. But Photoshop still is the industry standard of what it does. And it does a lot of stuff. And they stay up to date with their programs, and they listen to people, and they constantly add good features. So I still use it. I still like it. If I didn't do it as a job, though, didn't use it as a job, would I still pay for it? Not sure. I might try to find a cheaper option if I wasn't actively, making a living from it. William. Wow, it's really starting to come down now. Okay. Come on, computer. All right, William has a very different approach to this. I'm going to assume this is just like woods. Just scrubbly woods here. I'll zoom up. Got an interesting look for her. That's fine. Hey, I'm kind of open to the idea of showing her maybe a little different than what we've used to seeing her. But the biggest thing for me on this is it doesn't read as Red Riding Hood. Like, it doesn't have the right feeling. It feels like with the hair thing, with the band and the little, I don't know what this is, the thing on her hair, she almost comes across as like some sort of, I want to say Native American. She doesn't look Native American, but she almost has that sort of attire. And then with her friend wolf, and it's like a buddy adventure of the two of these. And that's not what this story is. So we need to make sure that this has the right mood, which is more of a haunting sort of mood, and that these two guys are opposites. This one is trying to eat this one. They're not friends, they're enemies. This could probably still work. You could probably still use most of this. Having the house down here, having the smoke from the house become part of that, that all works for me. When I saw this, I have no idea what you would do with how you would render this image. This is just what popped to my mind. So, no, I already put it in here, didn't I? Yep. Yoshitaka Amano. If you're not familiar with Yoshitaka Amano, you should be. For a lot of people, he is best known as a character designer for the Final Fantasy series for years and years and years and years, and is a traditional artist who has done a wide variety of absolutely amazing images. But I think that there's really not that big of a difference between the way that this one is approached and the way that yours is approached. And what I mean is, if you made this bluish gray background black, automatically that becomes more negative and more haunting. Then the light is kind of handled like that, so that the light is on her, but then it gets just off into black. And then she's got, all this stuff around her, and she's got like ties and all this accoutrements and stuff. And maybe you do the same thing on this. Maybe the red hood has all kinds of designs in it. Normally we see it as a fairly plain red hood, but you could add in a bunch more stuff and kind of change the culture up a little bit. So that's okay. We can change the culture up a little bit. Maybe it's a retelling of the story, but at least let's get the right mood for the story. So Yoshitaka Amano did that one. And this is another one, very classic image. Same artist, different sort of approach. Obviously not what we need. It's way more positive than what we need. But that kind of gives me the idea of, you could have a really positive sunlit scene here, but then it fades in to blackness up here, and she's kind of got this dramatic darkness around her. And then out in the shadows, you see the wolf. If somehow you could get the light, I don't want to just, obviously we looked at, not that one, this one, right? Kind of following this idea, I would want to play about having the light bigger, having this become the mouth of the wolf, or maybe the other way, right? That way. And so the wolf's mouth, like this, and then all of a sudden these patterns become the teeth, right? And you can have the light following this sort of way, and creating these different shapes. And so essentially, this becomes a shadow across there, and all of a sudden that becomes the shape of the wolf, and then you just have the one eye up there that you see, right? And yeah, That, I think if you looked at it, all of a sudden you got this beautiful, Red Riding Hood in the house. Oh my gosh, the whole thing is the wolf head. That would be more engaging. And maybe that could all be like blackish, and then your kind of normal forest out here. Yeah. So there you go, William. I think you've got some really solid stuff, and you got some other stuff that does need to be reworked. But I see that this could end up working really well. So I'll look forward to seeing your final on this one. We're getting a lot of rain tonight. Okay. Ricardo, I read over this question, but I'm not sure what you're asking me. Talking about the physiological impact of standard forms, but what about organic shapes and composition? I'm not entirely sure what you're meaning there. If you can rewrite that question or clarify that with me before next week, I will answer it next week. But I don't know how to answer that one because I'm not sure exactly what your question is there. But there you go. That is all of them. So we only just had 7 or 8 submissions this time. We might have more finals submitted. Like I said, you don't have to have sent in a sketch. That's just extra feedback if you wanted it. But you're welcome to send in the finals. Then next week, of course, we'll be kicking off a new challenge. We always have one going on. And if you want to get your questions answered during next live stream, make sure to become a patron, become a member of the Facebook group, because that's where I gather the questions in. I'll put a post out there asking for you to submit questions. And yeah, that's it for this particular episode. Don't forget that we have stuff going on with Swatches. If you want to schedule a one-on-one consultation with me, go to art-mentor.com. We will go over whatever thing going on with your art that you would like to chat about. We also have the Liliana sale. This is a really good video. I put a lot of time into this video, gave a lot of thought to this video. I want to think it's about 45 minutes long. You get PSD files. You get the palette template. I show you the whole start to finish process of doing this thing. 35% off through the weekend. It is January 11th right now. It ends the midnight of the 13th. January 13th. So there you go. And then lastly, we have the materials is the next reward coming out for my patrons. If you want to get the best price on this How to Paint Materials pack, if you want to get it earlier than everyone else, become a patron at either the $10 or $20 tier. So there you go. Thank you very much for everyone that has been joining me for this episode, everybody that is watching there on YouTube. And until I see you next time, keep drawing.